Pillar Talk with Rochelle, where authentic people share real stories focusing on one of the 12 pillars in my book, Simply Complex, Leading Out of Authenticity. I am your host, Rochelle Armstrong, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Hey, authentic you. Thank you for tuning in to Pillar Talk. I am your host, Rochelle Armstrong, and today we're going to do something a little different. So typically when you tune into the podcast, we have an amazing interview for you to listen to, but in the spirit of fall, we are going to take a very brief break, but what we're doing is a mid-season check-in for season 2. Now, what's going to be different about today's podcast is we're going to focus on you, the listener. Why? A lot of times we do hear other people's story and we do gain strength and we're inspired and we learn and we grow, but there is nothing like life experience. It's nothing like you putting in the work. And so if you've been listening to the podcast for any amount of time, you know that guests pick or select one of the 12 pillars that have shaped me out of my book, Simply Complex, Leading Out of Authenticity. And so they'll just use the pillar, not in the same context that I used it specifically in the book, but however that pillar is applicable to them and how it has shaped them negatively, positively, and then they just kind of share their journey. And so you're wondering, how am I going to do that? And we're not live and we're not really engaged. Is I want you to just take off the mask. I want you to allow yourself to just be. In this moment, there's nothing more powerful than your story, but a lot of times we're afraid of the consequences, the risk of sharing our story. What will people say? What will people think? But this is why, or one of the reasons why, I published such a vulnerable, transparent, and just tell all type of book is because what I believe is that disclosure, it does breed disclosure. And that if we would all just unmask, like we would see that beneath all of the personas that we've created, we're all human. We all have scars. We all have made mistakes. We all have shortcomings, and we all come from different backgrounds that has shaped us. And although some may be more positive than others, we're all humans that are just struggling and striving to make it in life. The difference between just living and existing is really being honest with yourself and accepting the truth. So in today's podcast, what I would like for you to do is just put yourself in the guest shoes. So imagine, like, use your imagination. I know we don't get to do that often, but like, use your imagination. So I'm going to kind of speak to you and I'm going to talk to you today. And I'm going to ask some questions that I really want you to reflect on, that I want you to ponder on. And it's just personal. It's just between you and yourself. Like, you don't have to share this with anyone. It's just allowing yourself to just be introspective and be in the moment. And for some of you, that's going to sound scary because you're not used to really having to look at your environment or your DNA or your identity, where you just go through life. A lot of us just adapt to whatever environment we're in. We just become whatever we need to be, but that's not living. That is just existing. And so I'm going to challenge you today to just really look in the mirror. I want you to reflect. I want you to be able to unmask and let your guards down and just be free, because I want you to heal. I want you to allow yourself to go on the journey of healing. And as painful and as scary as it is, it's going to take you on another level. And you don't have to be afraid of anybody, because again, it's safe. This is like the safest interview because no one's tuning in. No one knows your thoughts. No one knows what is going on behind the scenes. I don't get an opportunity to share highlights because this is really within you. And so, quick disclaimer, I've been suffering from a lot of allergies, sinuses, so you probably can hear some congestion. Good news, I really focus on self care. I promote it, I live it. So not only do I believe in like modern medicine, just take care of yourself. Where if that's vitamins, like I just ordered some new vitamins, I'm trying today, so hopefully they're going to help. However, I went to the doctor to get a prescription, for the infection. So don't let anyone put their beliefs on you. And I'm saying this just in full transparency because a lot of times, because each one of us, we have different beliefs based on our backgrounds, how we were raised, like what we were taught, and what we believe to be true. And although those things may be your truth, and maybe they work for you, they may not work for everyone. And so I'm not the expert. Like, I'm not here to tell you what you should or should not do. And when we share stories, like even our guests, we're not saying that you have to take their advice or you have to do what it is they did or what they're doing to recover, to heal, to continue to learn and grow, whatever you've heard throughout the podcast. But we do invite you just to be authentically you and do whatever it is that you believe in, that you think is safe, that you think is going to make you better. And so, like I shared that about self care, because depending on certain people's belief, they may not believe in medicine, they may want to take a more holistic approach. And if that is you, that's absolutely fine too. But what I would tell you is after a month, of trying to avoid having to get an antibiotic, to take medicine for sinus drainages that probably has turned into a sinus infection at this point. I just had to do whatever I needed to do to feel better. Despite, like, I just don't like taking medicine. I believe in taking vitamins, exercise, diet, and of course, I can improve in all those areas. But just when it got to that point that I just wasn't seeing a breakthrough, is what am I going to do to self care to be better for me and be better for the people around me? So the disclaimer is if I sound like really congested, really stopped up, that's because I am, but because I care about you. I care about this podcast. I still wanted to take this time just to share with you today as we embark on our fall break. So I'm going to use the book. I'm going to work hard, not harder. I'm actually going to work smarter. And so as I go over each pillar, and I want to thank and acknowledge the amazing guests that have already talked about that pillar and shared their story, I'm actually going to go to the book. So I got the book here today. I know you see the book behind me, but I keep that up there. Yes. For exposure, keep it top of mind. I still want people to go out and buy the book. If you haven't already gotten the book, if you have, I want you to read the book and actually do the activities. Like, go back if you read it initially just for pleasure or whatever reason. If you didn't get the opportunity to do the activities in the book, I want you to go back there and do them. But for now, I'm going to go over some of the moment of reflections and some of the activities with you. And so in season 2, Daniel Nelson, he kicked us off. And Daniel talked about environment. And so imagine you're on the podcast and you're being interviewed. And so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go to the book. And I'm just going to ask a few questions that I want you to really ponder on. And I want you to answer after you put some careful thought into it. And then just sit in it for a moment. So, the first question: what type of environment did you grow up in? And how has that environment shaped your identity? And again, if you listen to Daniel's interview, he really goes into depth about his environment, how that shaped him, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm asking you to take a moment and do the same. The next question: what are some of the things you took from your environment that would never change? You would never change a thing about that environment, and why? Third question: what are some things from your environment that you had to change? You could no longer do things the way that they were done in that environment. So you had to change it. And then ask yourself why. So that's for environment. The next episode, it was Joy Williams. And Joy really told her story of DNA. So I'm going to go to DNA. You're going to imagine yourself in Joy's shoes, and you're going to ask yourself some things about your DNA and how has that shaped you today. So here's a couple of questions you can ask yourself. What are some of the characteristics of your biological or adopted parents? So just think about things like when I think about characteristics, sometimes I think about humor. Like if you look at your family or your genealogy, and depending on how far back you go. So like for me, when I think about my mother and my grandmother, like they both had this certain type of humor that I believe I inherited. So that's something that's kind of nostalgic for me that I can hold on to, that I can really appreciate. Or for some families, it's sarcasm, like you can look back, or everybody's just kind of good natured or kind. Like think about that. Think about some of the characteristics. It's up to you if you want to focus on negative or positive characteristics, but just think about some of those and maybe jot them down. Another question. What role has DNA played in shaping your identity? Does it strengthen it or make it complex? Take a moment. Think about it. The last question on DNA. Does your DNA make it harder or easier for you to lead out of authenticity? You all know that's my thing. Leading out of authenticity. I'm going to read that again. Does your DNA make it harder or easier for you to lead out of authenticity? Take a moment and think about it. The next episode was with Charlotte Hazelwood, and Charlotte talked all about love. So we're going to talk about love. So let me go to that pillar in the book. So what I did in this section, like there's a moment of reflection. Again, if you have the book, it'd be a lot easier. You can just go to the book. Page 78 starts the moment of reflection. And then if you go over to 79, I put in there what's called 5 love actions. And so what I'm going to do is just kind of have you focus on those instead of like reading to you the moment of reflection. And then you can go back and read that, but it just gives you something to think about as you're doing this self-work right now. So if you're curious about how to create a culture where people feel loved and cared for, here are 5 actions you can do immediately. Know everyone by their name or their preferred name. Know how to pronounce it and use it. So let me just say, this is here because it is a struggle for me. Like I really put a lot of effort and energy into knowing people's name. Not only do I want to know how to spell it, I want to know how to pronounce it. And I really struggle. And so this is something I have to put effort into and really work on. A lot of people find it very disrespectful when you mispronounce their name or even when you spell it incorrectly, no matter how challenging or difficult it is for you. If you want people to feel acknowledged, if you want people to be seen, and to feel like they matter, their name matters. And so for you, I really want you to kind of put some time and effort into it if you struggle with it like me. And if you don't struggle, just keep doing a good job. So the second love action, ask questions about a person's interest, family, hobbies, and passions. So one of the things you may have heard like on one of my pillar tips, but I've even discussed like in one of the interviews, is I believe, and I got this from someone else who had shared this with me, but when you care about someone, you're interested in things that they're interested in. or things that they care about. And so it's important. Ask questions like, what are your hobbies? Tell me a little more about your family. If you're of different races or ethnicities, just show curiosity. So that way it becomes natural and organic where you're having conversations and you're hanging out. It's not like an interview where you're just asking very pointed questions. It just is kind of like, I'm just curious about you. It should be flattery. And over time, it'll help you with gift giving. It'll help you how to show love. Hopefully, this is mutual. So they're putting in the same work. And so it's just really important to really show interest in people. So, number 3, make time and be present. Make time and be present for people who matter to you. One thing I'm learning, because I've always kind of struggled with boundaries, is that everyone should not have access to you. A matter of fact, a young lady told me that one day. We were having lunch and I was just sharing different stories about different relationships. And she said, you know what? I'm kind of jealous because those type of people shouldn't even have access to you. And it's hard for me to even meet with you. And I was like, oh, I never thought about it that way. But, if you think about it, we only have so much time in a day. And each one of us are probably busy where you got work, you got your day-to-day job. You may have extracurricular activities that either you're involved in, your kids are involved in. A lot of people are involved with their place of worship. And they just have so many responsibilities. So if you have a whole lot of friends or a whole lot of people that constantly have access to you, how are you really giving thoughtful time and making each one of those encounters count? So you may not be able to reach everyone or spend time with everyone, but for the people who matter to you, it's important to try to make time, but not just be there. Have you ever been hanging out with someone or you're at dinner or just the person's on the phone, like you all are talking every 5 seconds, they're checking their phone, telling you, hold on for a minute. Yeah, you're present, but you're not present. So not only do you make time, but you also be present. Number 4, take time to build relationships. So if you think about it, the first one really kind of leads to the second great segue because if these people that you have looked at as worthy, as people of quality, that they matter to you, and I want them in my life, take time to cultivate those relationships. And what I would like little asterisk, if I was writing, I'll put a little asterisk here, and I would say, if the feelings aren't mutual, and you notice this after maybe 1 to 3 interactions, even though you may be interested, if they're not interested, I'm going to encourage you not to invest a lot of time in someone who isn't interested in you. And you're probably thinking about romantic relationships. No, I'm thinking about platonic relationships as well, work relationships. And so it should be mutual. Like no one really wants to be in a one-sided relationship. So people are worth invested in, but that should be mutual and the interest should go both ways. And number 5, start with a clean slate every day. Let me say that again. Start with a clean slate every day. Whew, that is a hard one for me. It's hard because that means that whatever offenses, whatever someone said to you, did to you today, tomorrow, wipe that slate clean and just start all over again. What I'm not encouraging, to be clear, is to stay in an abusive relationship emotionally, physically, psychologically, verbally. No. What I'm saying is we are human, and because we're human, we are flawed. We will make mistakes. We're not always going to get it right. So if a person has a behavior of always treating you negatively or poorly, that is unhealthy, and I would encourage you to let go. However, if it is not a person's normal behavior, but maybe once or twice, Maybe they misspoke. Maybe they didn't acknowledge a special occasion for you. Maybe they said something that hurt you, but you know it's not their character. Forgive them, wipe their slate clean, and start all over again. So that's what I'm going to encourage you to do with love. And if you can tell, it's becoming increasingly difficult for me to breathe. But we're going to get through this. We're going to get through this podcast, okay? All right. So the fourth interview or episode of the season was Irene Bustiano. And she shared her story of identity. So what we're going to do now, we're going to take you to identity. And we are going to have a moment of reflection. So what I'm going to ask is, how do you identify? How do you identify? Now, I'm going to add a little more context for you. So I'm going to read some from this chapter. This is actually on page 47 if you have the book. What's the first thing that just came to mind when I said, how do you identify? Your race, your gender, your age, your size, your socioeconomic, or your religious affiliation. Whatever came to mind, just think about when someone asks, how do you identify? What is your person? Not your purpose. How do you identify? I want you to take a moment and just reflect on that. And next, number 5, our 5th episode was with Kat Mayer. And Kat did a phenomenal job really talking about names. So I'm going to go to names, the pillar names, and we're going to have a moment of reflection here. So one of the things I wanted to do in the book is really get you to not just glean from my story. And when I say glean, that could be strength, that could be maybe inspiration. But I wanted you to focus on you. So like I share a story because I believe that disclosure breeds disclosure, hoping that you would be real with yourself. So this is really focusing on you as a leader. It could be you as a parent or just a role that you play for other people. But in order for you to be really healthy for them, you first have to be strong for you. And so I asked the question, number 1, on page 102, I'm at my best when for me, encouraging others, teaching, trying to build people up, not tear them down. That's when I'm at my best. What is that for you? The second question, when I feel good about myself, So I feel like I feel good about myself, literally, when I'm lifting up other people. Sometimes I can be like really low. So I have to make sure my motives are pure and I'm not just trying to lift up other people so that I can feel better, because that's a thing that we tend to do as well. But I like to put a smile on people's face. I want people to know their worth. I want people to know that they matter. And so for me, that makes me feel good. It makes me feel good when my family is happy, because I'm not as kind and it is always as gracious to them as I am to you and to my guests. I have really high standards and I have high expectations. So sometimes I can be a little harsh. And so when they are happy or when they feel loved, that matters to me, that they know my heart, that even if I am a little harsh or I have to discipline, that they know it's coming from a place of love. And despite whatever discipline I had to enforce, they love me anyway. And they know how much I love them. So number 3, one of my strengths as a leader is, that's a little easier, so you can fill in the blank. Number 4, when I make a mistake or a poor decision, I'll give you an example. I can really be hard on myself. And that's why I always say I'm a recovering perfectionist, because it's really hard for me to make a mistake. But what I learned as part of that perfectionism is kind of arrogance, is me not allowing myself to be human. Because remember, to be human is to make flaws or to be flawed, and it's okay. And so I'm not going to get everything right. And that's why I'm even doing this podcast, despite how I'm feeling, despite how I sound. I want to be imperfect to you. And the reason why I say I want to be imperfect to you is because in the day of social media, we could use filters, like we could use things to make ourselves seem better than maybe what we currently are in this current state. And so you're kind of getting raw me today. So I kind of polish myself. Hopefully, I look better than how I feel and how I sound. But when I make a mistake or a poor decision, I normally am kind of hard on myself for a little while. What about you? So again, this is on page 102. If you have the book, there are several more questions on page 103. In the interest of time, I won't go over all of them. This exercise is just to get you to be introspective, reflect, and just try to work on you. So the last interview was with Robert Heath Sr., and he focused on self-worth. And so let's go to self-worth. So what I did in the book, I'm on pages 134 and 135. I put the risk of choosing self-love, self-acceptance, and self-worth. And then I put the benefits of choosing self-love, self-acceptance, and self-worth. So I kind of lumped them all together. So I thought I would kind of go over that with you. And then you can think about it and think about why maybe sometimes it's hard for you to really, own your self-worth and how that can fluctuate. It's not always a constant. All right. The risk of choosing self love, self acceptance, and self worth. When you choose to love and embrace all of you, despite society's false narrative that this is pride and arrogance, it can be lonely. I wish we lived in a society where you could openly love yourself, accept yourself, and have self worth. And people would be happy with your newfound freedom. But they won't until they reach that level for themselves. Is that person you? Not going to read the whole paragraph. Again, it's on page 134. Now I'm going to go to page 135 and I'm going to go over the benefits of choosing self love, self acceptance, and self worth. If you make the bold decision to love and embrace all of you at the expense of not gaining or losing some disingenuous relationships, you would give the people you lead hope that they can do the same. I'm going to stop there. And you know why. You know I'm struggling to read and to talk right now, so I can't keep going. But I hope this little mid-season check-in as we go on a very, very brief fall break, because I'll tell you, we got some really powerful interviews coming up. So we did 6. Thank you, Daniel, for your powerful story in your interview. Thank you, Joy, for your powerful story in your interview. Thank you, Charlotte, for your powerful story in your interview. Thank you, Irene, for your powerful story in your interview. Thank you, Kat, for your powerful story in your interview. And thank you, Robert, for your powerful story in your interview. Hey, listeners, I hope that these interviews have been as meaningful and as thought provoking to you as they have to me. And if they have, I would love to hear from you. I hear from a few listeners every now and then. It would be great to just hear your comments or your feedback. Like on the podcast, you can rate it. You can also leave comments. On YouTube, you can leave comments. And you are part of the community. You're part of my tribe that has access to me. So I want to hear from you. And so if you go to my website, it's www. Did I say www.rochellearmstrong.com? There's a comment section, and you can put your information there. And then in the comment, you can just tell me why you want to connect. I would love to hear from you. I would love your feedback, or if you have ideas of some things maybe you would like to hear or you think would be like a nice ad. I would love, seriously, to hear from you. So today, thank you so much for your time. I hope you put in the work. I just want to see you be your best you. I want you to continue to learn, grow, and heal so that this world will get the best of you, because can't nobody do what you do like you. Thank you for tuning in today. Thank you for tuning in to Pillar Talk with Rochelle. Authentic people, real stories. Rochelle Armstrong, leading authentically.